Thanks for joining today, everyone. Welcome to the 16th edition of Dasra Philanthropy Week. For a decade and a half, DPW has been shaping conversations, sparking collaborations, and driving real-world impact across India's development landscape. And today, we kick off another incredible week, one that challenges us to think bigger, act bolder, and reimagine India's future together. As we move closer to India's centenary of independence, DPW 2025 is a platform for us to collectively envision a future rooted in equity, resilience, and opportunity for all. This year, under the theme Rising 2047, we're bringing together visionary leaders, philanthropists, and changemakers to explore bold, collaborative solutions to systemic challenges and drive inclusive growth. And this year, DPW is bigger than ever. We're hosting 40 plus convenings, both virtual and in person, with over 120 thought leaders, over 1,000 stakeholders, and 20 partners, while also expanding to Bangalore for the first time. With the lens of India for the world and the world for India, our discussions will dive deep into equity, collaboration, inclusion, innovation, measurement, and sustainability. Before we dive in, here are a few housekeeping reminders to ensure a seamless experience. To maintain clear audio and speaker focus, participant mics and videos have been disabled. Please respect speaker privacy and refrain from sending personal messages. Use the chat feature to ask questions and engage in discussions. We'll have a brief Q&A at the end. If you face technical issues, send a private message to the host for assistance. Hindi translation is available throughout the session. Simply click on the globe icon to access it. You would have seen it in the earlier slide. So let's get started. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our panelists. To get started, let me just frame broadly what the discussion today is going to be, and then we can dive in. As the name of the session suggests, what we're going to dive into is understanding the platform approach towards adopting technology versus the development of custom solutions, leaning strongly towards platforms as a way for nonprofits to scale, keeping in mind the various trade-offs, challenges, and best practices that nonprofits take into consideration on their journey with tech. We'll do this by learning from our fellow panelists' experiences, thoughts, and opinions. And we'll also explore more specifically how platforms enable collaborative learning within the nonprofit and social impact ecosystem. And so to begin, let me briefly introduce our panel for the day. First, we have Priyanka, who's the Joint Executive Director at the Antarang Foundation, which aims to help students discover their aspirations and make informed career choices. We have Gautam Raj, Head of Technology at Reap Benefit. Reap Benefit aims to ignite a movement of young changemakers to redefine civic and climate leadership, one action at a time. And we have Arjun, co-founder at Samanvay Research and Development Foundation, and Avni. Avni is a community service and data collection platform for nonprofits. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And I think to start, what we'd like to do is launch a poll. We have many of you here today, over 100 people right now. And just before we dive into the discussion, we'd like to launch a poll, which will help us understand the room a little better. And in doing so, I think it'll help everyone frame their responses to address the people in the room. So if we could have the poll up right now, the broad idea is that we'd like to understand where you are in your tech journeys in terms of tech maturity on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being we are very mature. So just click on the option that you think is relevant to you. Lots of responses coming in. We'll wait another 10 seconds and then close the poll. I think we have enough responses to get a sense of the room. Great. I think we can close the poll and share the results for folks to get a quick look at. Right. So broadly, everyone is middling. Half of the crowd is ranked themselves at a 3. And if I were to look at the overall thing, I would say, what is that? 50, 60, 80% of folks are between a 1 and 3 on tech maturity. And so I think that gives us a lot to think about as we frame our responses. I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll move into the discussion. Um, right. So to start, I think given that so much of the room, 80% or more of the room is between a 1 and 3 on tech maturity, um, what we'll try our best to do is stay away from jargon and ground this in program practice and relevance of technology to program practice, right? And with that, I think to begin, let's just frame the overall idea of this discussion, right? So when we say platforms as a way to achieve scale and for collaborative learning, what are platforms? How do they differ from custom solutions, right? So, and I was hoping, Arjun, you could talk us through that a little, right? The difference between platforms and custom solutions, and then we can dive into why platforms are important. Yeah.
Sure. First of all, thanks Abhishek and DPW for having me as part of this panel. Abhishek, if possible, can you pull up the slide deck that I'd like to take help of
Sure,
to
sure.
explain or answer a bit on this?
Just give me a minute.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think while you were pulling it up, yeah, I think we're starting to see it.
Yeah, can you see it?
So I think, yeah. So I mean, on the point of tech platform and custom solution, I think it's first important to understand what we're talking about. So when we say tech platform, it is something that is pre-built and configurable software framework that different users that can be used by multiple users, different organizations, projects, and they can customize it a bit to their needs and scale it as and when they need it. Versus when we're talking of custom solution, here we are talking of a fully customized solution where it is built from scratch to fit a very specific and unique need of the organization or the project. So that's a bit on definition. We can take a look at some of the trade-offs. I think the first thing that comes is flexibility. So platforms allow you to, like, they will have switches and configurations through which you can configure or customize the software to your need, but you will be constrained or you will be limited by the constraints that the platform provides. The platform might be focused on a particular domain or particular type of use cases, and they would have, like, the platform creators might have thought of certain workflows, and going beyond that might sometimes not be possible or very difficult. Versus you would get full flexibility and customizability in a fully customized solution if you've built. Uh, but I think the real catch or the real interesting trade-offs start from when we look at development time. Mostly the tech platforms would give you, like, the features. In some platforms you'd be able to start as soon as in a day, and maybe in a matter of few weeks you can get started. Versus for a custom solution, the development cycle, you'll have to start from very scratch, and then you have like mock-ups and various things done, and then you have engineers write code. So it's a long drawn software development cycle that you usually would follow for a fully custom solution. When it comes to cost, again, because you're using a lot of software code that's already pre-built, the upfront costs are quite low, and then there might be an ongoing cost. With custom solution, the it would definitely come with a higher upfront cost, because yeah, you're writing the code from scratch and using very basic, like, you'll start with technologies like either Java or Python and so on, and then you'll build the whole software on top of that. So, and then usually software doesn't get built in one iteration. So you might go through multiple iterations to really get it properly rolled out on the ground. So usually they come with a very high upfront cost. And what happens sometimes, we've noticed that it's not just the upfront cost. What really matters in the world of software development is the maintenance cost, the long term costs. And in this case, like that's usually a shared infrastructure or a shared between multiple users or projects who are using in the case of tech platform. But whereas in custom solution, it will be the responsibility of the organization. uh, when we talk of scalability, the platforms would allow you to scale up as you go on. There might be other projects who would have already tried, for example, for 500 user or 1,000 users, whereas if you start with 20 users, you have the ability that you would go gradually as you scale up your project. Whereas it will totally depend upon the custom. I mean, in the case of custom solution, it will be totally dependent upon the architecture. If in the beginning you did not think of scale, then you'll have to maybe sometimes rewrite the code or do certain things to ensure that it scales as your program grows and scales. Uh, when we talk of like ownership and control, that also becomes an important point I've seen as such um, uh, uh, in this sector is that the tech platform would usually managed by the provider, and you would have not like you would have lesser control, but you would have influence on what features get added to the platform. Whereas when it comes to custom solution, you might have full influence. You might be owning it up completely, and your partner or vendor might be adding features as you prioritize them. So that those are some of the trade-offs. I think when we have to choose between tech platform and custom solution, these are some of the trade-offs that we have to think of when making decisions. Some of the examples might make it clear, like for example, we've been working on Avni, that's a data collection platform for last 8 years. We've built it as a tech platform. Then there is Salesforce, which is also quite well known. WordPress, a lot of people use WordPress or Drupal for websites. Then there is like Glyphic, Dalgo. There are these platforms that folks would have heard. At the same time, I'm sure that organizations would have worked on this, where you wrote the software very ground up from using either PHP or Java or Python. Recently, I was on a field visit and I noticed an organization where they've written using PHP and MySQL. They've built like their own electronic medical record system. So that's an example um, of a tailor-made software. So I think these differences, there might be certain Abhishek, if you could go to the next slide, we could like delve a bit deeper onto like when we talk about platforms and custom solutions. Within tech platforms, again, it does not mean necessarily that it has to be open source or closed source. It can be open source, and then it is customizable. It gives you the flexibility to self-host it, and can be closed source where the vendor is completely deciding, and then you take a SaaS plan. There can be SaaS plans in the open source software as well. And within the custom solution, it can again be you can build it completely by your own tech team versus you get it built by a software company or a vendor or a partner. So I think those that I think would have clarified. To talk in a very, very basic analogy or basic example, I think of uh, that I might go and buy a ready-made shirt that fits my size sometime, or a pant, and maybe I would get it. I would get it altered to fit my length, for example, and that's an example that could be an example of a product or a platform. Versus if it's my wedding, I might go to a tailor to get my suit fitted. And in that case, also today I see that there are a lot of ready-made options available. So first, I go to a ready-made shop. I see that whether I can find something that I like, and if I don't like, then I of course have the choice to right start from choosing the cloth to finding the tailor to then getting it done as per my likes.
Thanks, Arjun. I love that example, right? of custom versus platform. And yeah, I think thanks for sharing that with us. Yes, putting it as simply as there's a lot of ready-made clothes out there, the same way there's a lot of ready-made platforms out there, and more often than not, that's what works for you with some mild changes, right? Or what we would describe as customizability within the platform, versus when you go pick the cloth, pick the buttons, pick everything else, and get it built from ground up, which is what custom solutions are. And I think while that example, I think, really helps us understand this quite well. Now, what I'd love to do is move the conversation to Priyanka and Gautam so we can understand how this becomes relevant in an NGO's experience, right? And so, Priyanka, maybe we can, or Gautam, maybe we can start with you. Broadly, just sharing with us your tech journey, right? Uh, as you scaled, as Reap Benefit grew, as you all became more mature with tech, what was your journey like? What were some decision-making points? And in relation to what Arjun mentioned, some trade-offs that you handled and some strategies that you now hold with you as you approach tech going forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Abhishek. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Let me just give a brief about the work we do, and then I'll get into our experiences of going to a tailor directly versus going to a ready-made shop and getting the things customized for our own needs. Um, there are a lot of research available today which talks about youth in India work from a space of apathy and inaction. That's the problem we wanted to address as Reap Benefit. So, how do we transform this apathy and inaction in youth into activated agency and skills by making them consistently take change making actions? So, what are these change making actions? These are small, micro level, small civic and climate actions that anyone can probably take at your home, at your community, or at your neighborhood. So, that's the kind of a work that we do. So how do we do it? What's our strategy looks like? It's the combination of grassroots mobilization, which means we have a team where we go on the ground, we directly work with these youth and help them to activate agency by solving local issues, plus technology as an enabler. So note the point here, technology is not a silver bullet, it is an enabler. Right? In that context, now coming to the actual question Abhishek has posted, what does our tech journey look like? So our journey started in 2016 when we decided there are a lot of young people taking wonderful actions on the ground and it is solving a real problem. Problems like potholes, problems like not having access to clean water. So can we capture these actual solutions and document it? So that's what we decided to do it. In 2016, we decided, okay, let us build a custom solution. I think we went to a tailor, basically said, hey, we want this. Can you make one for us? And we got it. Once that is rolled out, we then realized a lot of challenges in terms of people are not understanding why it is important to download this application. And tomorrow, if you wanted to add something, it is becoming very challenging. When I say add, people not only wants to learn or read what is the good solution, but also wanted to use a platform where they can say, hey, I'm facing this problem, can you help me? Hey, I wanted to run a campaign to mobilize some community members in my locality to solve issues. So gradually we started the need coming from the ground itself. But we wanted to make this change. Then we decided from one tailor to the other tailor, we moved on. So from a custom built app to a native app where you will download it from the Google Store or Play Store. And then the tailor said, hey, this is the best approach you can take. When we are doing it, we realized, okay, not everybody has a mobile phone. Even when they have a mobile phone, it is an older phone, then the Android update will not work. Okay, then what do? We went to a different tailor. That tailor said, let's bring everything together, let's build a web app. So basically, we have a lived experience of actually going through whatever Arjun has said. So this was a consistent cycle which have been going till a point where in 2020, that's when we started uh, getting into this concept of platforms. So our first thing was we actually experimented with WhatsApp powered chatbots. So there is a platform called Turn.io, and we started experimentation. And then that's when we realized the power of a platform like this where you don't have to worry too much about how it is built. You just need to know what you want to do with the platform, right? So you can imagine it's like a jacket where you buy it and it is a flip jacket. You turn it around, gives you a different color. You flip it, gives you a different color. And there are these shorts where you can make it 3/4 full pant, or also you can make it as a trouser, right? So that's kind of an ideology, something that you can imagine. So this was actually this progression was happening. And in the process, I think in the last 2 to 3 years, we came up with 3 to 4 strong principles that we strongly believe in terms of technological decisions. One, it has to be a low to no code friction, be it from an adoption point of view. Sorry, low to no friction, because the need of using these platforms comes from the organizations, not the beneficiary potentially. Same with the internal team. The management wants to use it. So how do we build a platform, or how do we have something which is easy to adopt? So WhatsApp in our case is a fantastic example, because people don't have to download another app. It's just one more chat. Second, the ease of customizability and faster deployment. For example, in the context of the work we do, if it floods in Bangalore, for example, people need access to resources. People need access to information. How do they get these information, and where do they get this information from has been a question. We wanted to roll out our technology platform before 2019, and that's when we realized it's not that easy or simple, because it's custom built. You have to make the changes, and if the vendor is not available, the vendor has to switch, right? Then you have to go through all the information about these platforms, and probably it will take 24 to 48 hours to roll it out. By then, the problem itself will become null and void. So how do we have a platform that is easily configurable and deployable at a faster rate? 3, integrations. I don't want to change as an organization the tools that works for me just because there's a new technology or a platform that is there. If people are comfortable with Google Sheets, let people use Google Sheets. I will build a platform that connects these Google Sheets and whatever the integrations that we have. So that's the ease of integrations, both with the current tools and with the existing other tools as well. And finally, the most important, this is my favorite, this should allow not for the platform that you choose, or the solution you choose should allow not for profits to do their core work. They shouldn't be just thinking about, they should worry about usage. They shouldn't be thinking about what feature to add, or like possibly what is the DevOps looks like, what server to use, how do I scale it, etc. I think these are the 4 strong decision-making principles that we follow. And in the last 4 years, it has been a good experience. It doesn't mean that we only have our platforms everywhere, but it's a hybrid mix of platforms. And I mean, in Arjun's context, so we got the ready-made thing, and then we know how to actually custom fit it according to our needs, and we have the right tailors for that. So yeah.
Thanks, Gautam. Love that. I think my main takeaway from that is like, are we non-profits or are we tech companies, right? And if we're non-profits, then we want to focus on our core work and then use what can be easily adopted, quickly altered to meet our needs, right? Priyanka, what about you at Antarang's end in terms of your growth over time? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gautam. So much resonance to our own tech journey as an organization as well. Again, I'll share a little bit of what Antarang does as an organization, what we do, and really how tech has enabled us to do that more efficiently and effectively in the time of our work. A lot of young people, and especially those from marginalized backgrounds, are really aware of maybe 4 or 5 different career options, right? And what that does in a lot of ways for young people from these backgrounds is the lack of awareness, access, ability, along with that enabling ecosystem really deters them from reaching high wage careers, which further perpetuates the poverty cycle that they are in. And that's largely the problem Antarang is trying to solve for. So we begin working with the student or the young person at the age of 13 years, which is broadly between grade 8 and grade 9. And the idea really is to say, one, how do we build a very strong careers curriculum and a trained facilitator to run and deliver this careers curriculum for young people. Two is really how do we build an enabling ecosystem around that young person with either with industry, with schools, with local NGO partners that really support that young person's transition from school to work. And third is how do we integrate career education into schools as a subject so that it is accessible to all young people. So that's sort of largely what we do as an organization. For us, through the 12 years of our journey, really tech has been a way to answer critical questions that we've been asking as a part of doing our work across these different stages. So briefly to talk about it, when we started in 2012, right, 2012, 2013, we were working with a really small set of students across 2012 to 2015. We worked with about 6,000 students, very focused within Mumbai. So very, very similar demographic as well, right? And at that point, all we wanted to do is to establish, does career education have an impact on how young people transition after school? And that's largely where we began to use tech. Like a lot of us sort of probably began our tech journey with. It began simply with pen and paper collection, using Excels, not even Google Sheets at that point, but using Excels, using uh, pen and paper, and our facilitators themselves manually correcting and enabling career education. And that worked really well for us as we began our journey. Once we had sort of really established that proof of concept somewhere around 2015, the question then was, okay, now how do we replicate it and get it to all young people all across the country, right? And in those times, the pen paper ceased to be effective, efficient for us. Our career facilitators or the teachers were spending more time in the back end work. And I think much like Gautam said, how organizations need to spend time in core work, teachers and facilitators also need to spend time in their core work, which is really uh, facilitating sessions, teaching young people. And that's when we sort of moved to a more platform-based approach. And for us, Salesforce is really what that platform became. We were looking at something that would ease up our operational processes and free up the facilitator from some of that. The second big piece we were answering at that point is just how do we both standardize and customize at scale, especially in a domain like career education, which is so contextual. And there again, technology became a lever to say, what can we really standardize that moves across all our students? Our data collection moved from pen and paper to optical magnetic readers, OMR sheets. We built our operational processes on Salesforce. We built code which was on these platforms that enabled us to customize reports. And then, of course, COVID hit, and it was a lot about just how do we make sure we're reaching all young people 24/7, providing them with all we need. And that's really where platforms kicked in for us significantly, right? Much again, like Gautam Raj said, everyone had a mobile device, everyone had WhatsApp. The learning curve was extremely low. So we started exploring WhatsApp-based solutions as an organization, and that's where Glyphic, or WhatsApp chatbot, kicked in for us to say, with an extremely low learning curve, and no increase in cost from the user side, how can we still make sure careers is accessible to all young people? And through this journey, we've sort of doubled each year, right? Today, we are working across 5 states in the country, reaching over 1.5 lakh students. And I think the big question we're trying to answer is, how do we really scale, right? How do we optimize and how do we further scale? And scale not just our program, but what are there other platforms that can help us scale other aspects of our work as well? Which is, for example, in our context, it's the teacher training that we do. That's when a platform like Moodle kicked in for us. How do we scale our internal support teams, right? Whether it's our talent and culture team, our finance teams, that's potentially where Zoho as a platform is kicking in for us. And that's really been our data journey. I think through this data journey, to add one more piece that's been very critical in the way we thought of tech, is really how do we want to expand our teams, and do we want to expand our tech teams as well? In the sector, it's extremely difficult to get people at the constraints that not-for-profits function with to get high quality tech resources. So what we've been very conscious of is internally, how do we build product expertise that helps different people in the organization really articulate what is the problem that they are trying to solve, right? And then really use vendors and consultants to handle the technology side of it to help us further customize and build tools. So that's briefly been our tech journey and how we've made decisions across the 12 years.
Thank you for sharing that, Priyanka. And I think that's such a valid point you made towards the end, especially around what resources do we want to what resources are available to us first, and then where do we want to kind of put our investment, right? Which is so relevant for nonprofits who are trying to scale given constraints of budget. So thank you for sharing that. And I think if we could maybe dive a little bit deeper, specifically now into what kind of benefits from an ecosystem perspective you see in your journey with platforms, right? So we've got Reap Benefit on the one hand that went with custom solutions, eventually has now transitioned to platforms, runs with maybe a 2% tech team, right? And we've got Antarang that's done the full progression, largely leaning on platforms, adopting more and more. I think the count is at 6 or 7 now, right? And we've got Arjun who's developed Avni over the years with input from various nonprofits, right? And so as an ecosystem, with y'all as participants within that ecosystem, how do you see the influence of platforms on your learning, your growth, the strength of the platform over time? Yeah. Maybe we can start with Arjun, if you'd like to go first and talk a little bit about Avni. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So I would say that the see, with a custom solution, what happens is that because it's a very close collaboration between who's building the software developers or whoever. Many times the software developers are in-house and they're just focusing on that one particular problem statement. So there is definitely an advantage over there. But with what happens is in tech platforms, almost every tech platform you'll see, they have a user community. The user community, and then so usually facilitated by tech platforms, and then the user communities help shape the direction to a lot of extent for the tech platforms. It of course depends upon how big the user you have, how much influence you have, or how tightly collaborating the community is. But it's in most cases, it's a symbiotic relationship that exists between the tech platforms, or I can say a well designed or a well managed tech platform is not just a software piece. It's also the ecosystem. Ecosystem is a very important pillar over there. For example, in case of Avni, what has happened is we started building it in 2016 with just a couple of NGOs having different use cases, but we thought that a generic platform can be built that can serve this use case. And then what happened is that as we kept on coming across project, we thought that, yeah, I mean, if we just focus on this field staff related, community work related use case, there is commonality, and with every project we get to know some more features that if we build, definitely this organization is voicing about this feature, I mean, is asking for this feature, but this will help all the other organizations who are working in similar settings as such. So when a next organization comes, they get that feature for almost free as such. So that's how I think, and every new organization who adopts the tech platform benefits from what inputs rest everybody has already given. So there is this collaboration in time. And then of course what happens is that today, I mean, we do regularly events like webinars, or we have an annual conference where everybody gets together. There are inputs whether on the product roadmap, There is cross learning between NGOs also. That's also a very important pillar or very important thing that tech platforms facilitate. For example, one NGO has done really good of training the field workers to adopt technology. They've done the change management really well over there. Then that's something they share it with everybody else, and through that every other NGO, they don't end up reinventing the wheel in that direction. I mean, they learn from the other NGOs. So there is a lot of cross learning that happens because the tech platform in a way is at the center. There is this commonality that is there as such, but then that brings together all these NGOs, user community, and sometimes it's not just user community. For example, Tech for Dev is one of the most important funders also for Avni. But at the same time, Tech for Dev builds a technology ecosystem. So many a time it happens that like an organization can get help either through funding or can get help through connecting with other platforms also. Like in our case, we've ended up building Avni and Glyphic, the chatbot integration together, right? So what happens is that it's not just the user community, but then funders and other sometimes policymakers come together. There is one NGO who's championing the cause of democratization of data. And we recently concluded our annual conference, and the NGO gave a very inspiring presentation around why they think that it is important, and that got other NGOs thinking about it. So I think this is like I earlier also mentioned, it's a symbiotic relationship. Both the tech platform learns because of the community, the ecosystem, and then the ecosystem also benefits continuously because of this. So yeah, I think we've seen through our experience that really speeds up and optimally utilizes the resources, which even like Priyanka mentioned, they are really like we are constrained in the development sector. Most of the NGOs would have very limited resources to devote towards this, so we can optimally utilize that.
Thanks so much, Arjun. And I see a lot of questions flooding in, which we'll get to really soon. Before that, very quickly, could Priyanka, you and then Gautam share maybe one example building on what Arjun's shared, right? About learning from each other or having a common need, which you then see solved by a platform because there's a number of you who have that need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, where it really helped from what Arjun, Abhishek, both of you are sharing, is it's a collective pool of resources is what platforms enable you to do. So when we introduced our chatbot, and one of the big pieces there, which we were always clear with any platform, is it needs to integrate with other platforms that we have to just collectively leverage, right? For us, that big connector at that point was Google Sheets. So how do we really connect our chatbot to our already existing Salesforce and Moodle tools that we had? So one of the features that we wanted was the ability to read and write from our WhatsApp chatbot data into Google Sheets to help provide personalized career query responses to young people. So that was our use case. So when we went to the platform provider in this case, what was useful to know is another organization had already supported building the feature of the ability to read from a Google Sheet onto the chatbot, right? So that was really useful. We didn't have to spend any time and resources, and that feature had already been unlocked for us. What we then realized was we wanted the reverse feature, which was to the ability to write on a Google Sheet, right? And that's where it really helped. So we wanted to write for a specific use case, which is to be able to say, write some data that's coming from the chatbot into the sheet. Another organization wanted it to be able to build dashboards on their Google Sheet as well. And then the platform provider was able to build this writing to Google Sheets feature in a generic way that was applicable to multiple use cases and not just a singular use case. So I think even for us, when it began with, okay, all we want to do is to be able to write certain responses onto the Google Sheet, it's the way it's now built, it's helped us expand to think about, okay, how else can we leverage this feature? And that's been one of the examples that's been really useful for us as an organization.
Thanks, Priyanka. Gautam?
Yeah. I think plus one to what Arjun and Priyanka has mentioned. I think just wanted to give one example probably. Since we have a lived experience with burning her hands with the custom solutions, sometimes what generally happens is it becomes a requirement, right? Say for example, the person who's actually sitting and doing it might not understand the context with which this particular feature or this particular thing needs to be addressed, and it is not that their need also there, right? Like, because it's a relationship between there is a requirement given and the need getting fulfilled. The moment we move transformed to the platforms, like I think Priyanka rightly and even Arjun pointed out, the support with the community, where it becomes more like a use case that is extremely generic, possibly, like not it's not the only problem that you are solving, and it actually helps to break silos, because lot and time and energy, already the resources which are available is limited, and then the reinventing the wheel happens again and again because of these silos. It might not collectively give a larger impact. So I think one such example that I can give you is, we need a system where we wanted to collect the location. Like, imagine the flood example, people want to share where exactly they are. So which means we want a system through the chatbot itself, people can send the, like, pinpoint a location, because sending location is different by pinpointing this is exactly where I am, right? So that accuracy is important. And then this information needs to be populated on a different system altogether. So we had a conversation, and with Glyphic, we know, like, since we adopted Glyphic, and then it was explored, and then we actually saw a lot of other organizations also in need of something. It made as a offering on the platform itself. And then like we built a custom solution using our Frappe systems, again an open source framework tool, which take these information and then just populates it as a map. And right now, that particular map offering, whatever we built from Glyphic to the Frappe system, right, like very recently through the support of FOSS United and another not-for-profit, which focus on enabling free and open source ecosystem for not-for-profit specifically, helped us to build a system called Samaja. Like, that itself is right now a kind of a platform, but that any not-for-profit can possibly take and leverage for different use cases, mostly around how do I meaningfully acknowledge my beneficiaries, how do I make best meaning out of the geolocation information that I'm collecting, how can I create a positive competition, not a competition, rather than an inspiration over competition kind of a thing. So yeah, I think it's all this is happening because of technology comes second, right? Like, it's more about the purpose, use case, and then the group of community people that you have with a shared vision of making possibly the world a little better place.
Thanks, Gautam. And I think what all of you shared, if I could try and summarize that broadly, is that when you work with a custom solution, it's like learning alone. And when you work with a platform, you're learning as a group. The platform is learning and the users of the platform are learning at the same time, right? Everyone from each other. And I think that's the power of platforms, right? Especially for nonprofits that have their own very specific needs, which don't really match commercial solutions. And so now coming to the Q&A, and we'll try to do this in a bit of a rapid fire manner. Sneha has had her eye on the chat, and over to you, Sneha. Feel free to just ask the question and direct it at whoever's relevant. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Abhishek. Okay, so panelists, one of the questions that came in is around if someone is already using an existing platform or has explored an existing platform, when should they think about moving to a custom built solution? Arjun, would you like
I
to
can
go?
take that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I can take. So I think like when you've tried out, I suppose what's happening really is that some of your needs are getting met, because you're saying that either proof of concept is done or something is done using the platform, and then some of your needs are not getting met, or you just did it for proof of concept. So I would say that, like, one example that or like if the tech is very core to what you're doing, I think it makes sense that you invest that much in building your own solution, maybe from scratch, and have enough flexibility and all of that. Like, for example, if I am a Swiggy or I am a Make My Trip, I might end up having my front end application at least built the way I want it, because that's my differentiator. Or, for example, if I am rolling out Crash across across like 10,000 Crash or 15,000 Crash across the country, and I have like use cases that can't be met by a particular platform, then I might decide that, yeah, I need a custom application, and the investment there will also be justified. But let's say if that's not your use case, that's not your scenario, then you need to think that some of the things that I am compromising on, can I live with that? Like, is it something that's really, really necessary? Like the 30 or 40% things that I am not getting, how important they are, that I need to now get into this custom solutions journey where it will be the one-time cost and the recurring costs, etc., that we talked about. And always consider the hidden costs that are involved in custom application, not hidden because somebody is hiding it, but what happens is that by its nature the software doesn't get built right the first time. Actually, it requires that iterations, and usually the cost given first time is considering only of that and not considering the multiple iterations that it might require. uh, so that's one point. And then you have to see, I mean, usually what we see is that platforms will never meet your 100% of the requirement. You might be really super lucky, or the platform was exactly built keeping exactly you in mind. Sure, I mean, maybe 95% or 100% it could meet. But if you can get to 80%, and I think that should be the maybe the level. And sometimes you can influence the tech provider to see that instead of that you are going to invest in a custom solution. Instead of that, if I help you build this feature, would you be willing to add that feature to the platform? So I would say that these are some of the questions that you need to ask, or these are some of the options that you need to consider when you are at that juncture of, now I've tried a platform, but some of my needs are not getting met. What do I do? I hope that answers that question.
Thanks, Arjun, for that. Okay, so my next question is either Priyanka or Gautam, if you can take this up. For nonprofits that are just beginning their digital transformation journey, what are some practical steps they can take to integrate tech solutions without overwhelming their existing processes and teams?
I can take this. So I think one of the first thing is to ask what approach are we taking? Is it a problem first approach or a solution first approach? Because most times what generally happens is like chatbot is a cool thing or AI is a cool thing. Let's do it. Like, so that kind of a, not a peer pressure, but something to be like mostly a FOMO kind of a thing is something that we have observed in the limited conversations we have been having in the community discussions that we are having. So that is the core thing that one has to evaluate first. And then second, once the problem is, okay, it's going to be a problem first thing, and eventually we have to see the use case fit of it and see what are the existing solutions which are already there. If you are choosing a solution, it is recommended that it is always better to choose the one that gets integrated with what you already have. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I would recommend based on the experiences what we have seen.
Thanks, Gautam. Okay, all right. So Priyanka, you can answer this one. This was a question for Gautam and you on the chat. How do you drive adoption of your tools, platforms across programs of other orgs to drive unified change making?
Thanks, Neha. I think to clarify, neither Gautam or me build tools explicitly, right? A big part of what we build is or request for is essentially features on or additional capabilities on existing platforms. And the way we do that, I think it's twofold a role. One is as NGOs ourselves, how do we really understand the sector at large? How different people can leverage. So how often do we go back to our networks, talk to other NGOs on, this is the problem I'm facing. Are you facing this problem as well? How are you solving it? So really doing that sort of conversations around it. The second is by the platform itself, which is really to be able to, especially if the platform is catered towards social good or not for profit, then for them to really be able to talk to other organizations in the sector and really review its need as well. Right, to say how applicable is it? Is it a one-off use case? Do many organizations need it? And that's really how some of this collaborative adoption of features and tools work.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Priyanka, for answering that. Okay, so let's move on to the first question that we got here. This was on what are pros and cons between open and closed source platforms. Arjun, if you like to take that up.
Yeah, I mean, see, what will happen in an open source platform is usually there would not be license fees that is involved. If the open source platform, you may have two choices over there. One is that, I mean, so at a very, I mean, stepping back, open source, of course, allows you to take the software. There might be different types of licenses involved there. Some license even allow you to take the software, modify it the way you want to modify it, and then deploy it wherever you want to deploy it. Some softwares do not allow modifying. Some softwares say that you give attribution if you're modifying. So that is one part. The other aspect, of course, is the self-deployment or using a cloud-based solution that the either the main creator or technical partners might be providing. So that is, I
Have we lost Arjun's voice?
Yeah.
hello.
We lost you there for a second, Arjun.
Yeah. Is it? I'm back now.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you now.
Yeah. So I was saying that open source, I mean, you can have like self-hosting or a cloud-based model. And with the closed source, usually you won't have like ability to look at the source code. Sometimes, for example, if your tech team wants to compare between two platforms by looking at the source code and then deciding which one is more secure, which one is more robust and all of that, you might not be able to do that. That is one this thing of closed source software. You might be end up paying license fees, etc. But at the same time, because the closed source work in the whole like high funding atmosphere, they may sometimes end up being having more user friendly features, or they may end up having more features that are closer to you. So I think based on some of these factors, you can decide which product. I would say first, if I were to approach a solution, I would ignore the open source and closed source part. I would look at first just the features that I need, and then I'll see the price points and then the development time, etc. And then lastly, I'll see the flexibility that, okay, down the line, if I don't want to be locked to this vendor or I don't want to keep paying the license fees, what options have I got? And open source provides you that ability that you are not locked to a particular vendor. You can choose your vendor and get that software deployed, etc. It opens up those doors. Not every time it is practically possible, but it at least keeps those options on the table.
Thank you, Arjun, for answering that. Back to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Neha. Thank you, everyone. I think we're nearly at time. There are maybe one or two unanswered questions. Please feel free to reach out to us, chat with us more. I think broadly the takeaway from this, or as far as I see it, is if you're a nonprofit that's on your tech journey, start problem first. Think about what you really need to solve and what's negotiable, right? And speak with people. Try things out first, and more often than not, you'll find something that meets 80% of your needs that already exists there, which other nonprofits are learning from and benefiting from. Use that until you reach a 5 on the scale that we polled on earlier today, which is then maybe when you need more customized, finely tuned, very specific solutions, right? Thank you so much, Arjun, Gautam, Priyanka, and Sneha, for your time on this call today and for sharing your insights. And I hope that people get in touch with you and that this conversation keeps going. And I think the last thing to mention is that the Dasra team will now push a poll for this session. So please do put in your responses to that poll, following which we will close out. Thanks again, everyone. See you around.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You.